Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin. I always do my chronological thing. It just seems like it was January 1st, but it ain't. It's January 12th, and I'm with Mary Desch, former psychiatrist. We're going to talk about that. We're really going to talk about that. Former psychiatrist, now an author under the name M.M. Desch, and her first book, which came out, I think, in July, Tangled Darkness, which we're going to talk all about her journey. That's one of our buzzwords, her and I, journey, the journey. And she's gone from psychiatry to writing. And obviously, lots of her words and thoughts and notions come from her journey as being a psychiatrist. And by the way, we've been talking. And I don't do this a lot, but we've been talking. By the way, Mary, we've been talking for almost an hour and a half, just BSing.
I know, it's incredible.
Because we're on similar journeys. She's a psychiatrist. I was a pharmacist. She's an author now. I'm an author. Podcasting. So great particulates of commonality and bonding, and I think that's great. She also loves the WNBA, which I do.
Yeah.
Uh, so this is
Caitlin Clark isn't the only star.
no,
There's lots of stars in the
yeah, yeah,
WNBA.
and I watched Paige Becker's, from UConn,
Yeah.
and UConn's right up the road from me here in Jersey, and I've been a huge fan of Gino. It gets a little annoying, I guess. They keep winning year after year after year,
Yeah.
and that kind of bothers me. I got to spread. Pat Summitt.
Mm.
Was great. And hey, Rutgers, got to the Final Four twice, so I was kind of happy about that. But there's so much energy and stuff here for you folks out there because these are great insights coming from a person who sat across somebody laying on a couch and pouring out their heart and soul and pieces of their liver. I don't know. I'm joking. So this is really, really special time. So this monologue of sorts is now concluded. Mary, if you want to say a few words, background things, and then we will jump in to things. Take it away.
Well, sure. So I'm Mary Desch, and my writing name is M.M. Desch. And I'm sitting here in Portland, Oregon, the beautiful North Pacific Northwest, which I am completely blessed to have landed in. Do you know, I started in Nebraska. I was born in this little town in Nebraska, York, about 6,000 people, and very much a farming community. And I grew up in Nebraska, and there are many beautiful things about Nebraska, rich farmland, wonderful people. But for me, the fit between me and Nebraska really wasn't so good because I was a queer kid, and I was a queer kid back in the 60s and 70s when words like lesbian, gay, trans, they just weren't even in the vocabulary. So I wanted to get out of Nebraska. I landed in Minnesota. Uh, After I finished medical school, I went to residency in Minnesota and lived in Minneapolis for about 15 years. And I finally got to Portland by way of Phoenix. I lived in Phoenix for about 18, 19 years, and that's where I met my wife. And all along the way, I worked in psychiatry, mostly interested in first psychosomatics, the connection between our mental lives and our physical lives. Um, and then addiction. And addiction became a very compelling and powerful area of medicine to work in. Anyway, Liz and I decided we needed to get out of the heat of Phoenix. My parents had moved on, crossed the Rainbow Bridge, they say. And so we didn't have a reason to stick around in Phoenix. So we came to Portland in 2015. And I worked in psychiatry a little bit further, but then uh, it just wasn't there for me. I can't really explain it. Sometimes your heart just isn't in it. And so I laid it down in December 2019, and little did I know it was going to be around the corner. It was uh, turning into an author. What a journey, Calvin.
Oh, I know. That's the bonding here, the journey aspect, and you know, and how we land on our feet. Of course, it's easy to say, well, it's destiny. You were destined, and the quote, your journey through psychiatry. I mean, that is so powerful, and the experiences that just gives such flavor and meaning to what you're doing. You can't learn that, and you can't feel it, and you can't even have AI mess around and teach you that. You just got to live it, and you lived it, Mary. You really have lived it. And the journey is spectacular. I'm looking at Nebraska. It's funny. I was a big Iowa fan, meaning all the years growing up, I always had this fixation with Iowa. Why? Because it was pure mid-America, and
Mhm.
I like that, and away from all the influences that we have here on the East Coast, and the tensions and all this stuff. So all my growing up, actually, I even looked into going to Drake University.
Mm. A wonderful university, yeah.
Yeah, they had a pharmacy school there, and I might have been able to play basketball for them. Why? Because I wanted Nebraska, Montana, Dakota, Iowa. I wanted that, and I didn't know why I wanted it because I lived in Jersey all my life. I have 8 million neighbors. I open up my window and I look out, and there's 8 million windows out my window. Anyway, so let's talk. So you trained and you practiced as a psychiatrist, obviously, before you became a novelist, and we kind of just touched on it. But how does that clinical background still shape the way you build characters and most importantly construct suspense? How does that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just think healthcare, medicine, it's a natural for suspense, if you think about it. And then psychiatry in particular, it's an intense field. People are really having crises in their lives, or suffering tremendous losses, or just challenging physical health problems, all kinds of things, just living life and experiencing difficulties of life, and landing in psychiatry office because there's a mental health component to all of it. And they recognize that and want to get help. So I can't tell you over how many years, like we'll put it in the decades of hearing people's stories, the human experience. It was such an honor and such an opportunity to learn, what we all go through. We, the species, Calvin, what we all go through.
Thank you.
And it just really helps me to construct, fictional people. Um, it just, I don't know, there's this part of me that is, if I'm in the groove, so to speak, some kind of creative spark can happen. And all of a sudden, I can start imagining a particular person, and maybe with a particular quirk, or a particular way of speaking, or a particular background. And it flows, and dangerous situations erupt, and usually there's a body somewhere, when you're writing in crime fiction. So when there's um, the situation of murder, there's intensity and suspense inherent in that scenario. I thought, when I would first start writing, I thought, well, I'll just write a murder mystery, but it turned into a thriller. So I guess what's really in me is writing medical thrillers, writing queer thrillers, writing psychological thrillers. Those seem to be kind of top of the list of what comes out of my creative river.
Okay. I'm taking notes. I'm one of the few interviewers in the country that sits in the interviews and takes notes. So if you see me going like that, it's because
Yeah,
well, because this is ongoing, and I want my notes to kind of to guide me along. Um,
sure.
so you rebooted your creative writing journey in the spring of 2020. Um, uh, was there an exact moment or that first scene that ignited that spark, that creative spark?
Do you know that it was something that evolved more over weeks, and for some reason I found myself. Well, I think the reason was I realized I truly was laying down medicine because I had given a real strong go of retiring at the end of 2017. But then I went back, and I went back after months of being out and kind of went back more on a part-time basis. So I was really going to lay it down at the end of 2019. And of course, I was thinking, well, now what do I do? What am I going to be doing with my time? And I had this book, Carolyn Mace's book, Sacred Contracts, Finding Your Divine Potential. And Carolyn Mace is one of my favorite spiritual gurus. You probably have figured it out with a full name like Mary Margaret, that I came from a Catholic background. And if you look into Carolyn Mace at all, she also came from a Catholic background, but she kind of evolved beyond Catholicism. And she's just generally into spirituality and other realms, let's just say. So, anyway, I was going through that book and I was just journaling. And a lot of it had to do with capturing pivotal moments in your life, where you might have experienced like a shift in your worldview, where you come out the other end and you're somebody different. There's no way going back. And so I was doing that. And the interesting thing that happened was I started journaling characters in this book, Tangled Darkness. It started with the villain, or one of the villains. There's several villains in this book. and and then another character and another character. And then one day when Liz and I were out walking the dog, um, I just said, you know what, I want to write a book. And I should add at this point, we were in the lockdown. We were just like 2 months into the lockdown from COVID at that point. And she just responded with total support. So that's what got me going. And
Wow.
I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never written any long form fiction at all.
Yeah. It's quite amazing. It's and it is quite amazing because I've been there. I've done that. I went from selling eyeglasses to writing a novel. Where does that come from?
Yeah.
Uh, um, and it was about 1 million miles away from me when I made that decision. 1 million miles away. And my wife sat there in the kitchen. I said, I'm going to write a novel now. You know, just support. There's great support, but can't touch that. It's just do what you got to do. And so I did what I had to do. It was deep inside. This stuff
Mhm.
is so deep. Maybe we ought to do a session.
Yeah.
I was telling you, some of the spiritual stuff is, I got to check out the Carolyn Mace, and I also got to check out that Red Book. Um,
Oh yeah, Carl
yeah,
Jung's Red Book.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
got to
really
understand this.
intense.
I told you. Anyway, moving on. I don't want to get sidetracked because you have all the ingredients to sidetrack me for hours and hours and hours. I'm going to control myself. Um, so how do you translate clinical and technical data into scenes that readers really feel strongly about? Um, I mean, how does that part of the
Yeah.
process work?
Weaving in the medical part of
Yeah.
the story because, and I didn't know anything about this to start with. I launched into a learning journey really about what is story structure, and what are you really doing? You're really telling the story of the protagonist's transformation, in crime fiction in this area that I'm writing. But you got to have a plot around it through which, the change in the character um, occurs, in response to. And so, I had to take a lot of instruction because in my early drafts, and I'll tell you what, Calvin, I stopped counting how many drafts of this book at some point, and I just started to identify them by color
Mm.
because, you know, after you get to like draft 6 or 7, you're kind of feeling like, I mean, how many times am I going to go through this book? So then you call it orange and purple and, you know, um, so uh, with each revision, I would have to refine and strike the balance of how much of the medical technical component is necessary to tell what the real story is. And usually I had to tone that down. And so I took feedback from early readers. Um, I took classes on story structure. Um, I took workshops, from organizations like Sisters in Crime, a fantastic international organization. There's a local Willamette Writers community here in Portland, Oregon, home of Powell's books.
Mhm.
Um, and just I made author friends, and so friends would agree to read and give feedback. And with all of that, I learned how to strike the balance.
So that part helped you. I never did that, so I'm learning. I'm actually learning from you. I just wrote, just wrote, and there were no drafts. I just wrote it, and all three times that I've done this. So
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by your part of the journey with the colors, and you had beta readers and stuff, and so much more sophisticated. I, I I never did anything that way. And maybe it shows. My first book is in the garage if you want a copy.
Yeah.
Uh,
You start somewhere though, right?
yeah, well, you started and it's a journey, your journey, my journey. Um, Tangled Darkness talks about addiction and opioid related issues and stuff. Do you feel a certain responsibility when you're writing fiction because you're now there is a responsibility because you're now exploring public health related issues.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the importance, the sober quality, if you can accept the metaphor of writing about people with addiction, um, is um, you know, I take that very seriously. There are so many people, and all we have to do is travel around in our communities and we can just see people living without homes, living outdoors. And let me tell you, probably more than 90% of them are out there due to addiction,
Mm.
due to mental disorders, or all of the above. And maybe it started because loss of job and financial difficulties. But once you're on the street long enough, you're gonna wind up with mental disorders, post-traumatic stress, or substance use disorders, getting through the cold winter, a little methamphetamine helps a lot of people do that. Um, and so it's just surrounding us, the issue of addiction and mental health day after day. And, my heart breaks at how this country has fallen away from taking care of people who really are ill, you know, uh, they're ill, just as someone with pneumonia is ill. And so I wanted to entangle darkness, show the vulnerability of this population. Um,
Powerful.
and I also wanted to show a character in recovery from addiction, down the road a few years to illustrate for people how recovering from addiction isn't a one and done kind of thing. It's a lifelong process. Um, and so, yeah, I take it very seriously.
By the way, that is one powerful motive, one powerful piece of energy, because that subject is all over our world, and it manifests itself in so many different ways. It's almost incomprehensible. And I saw elements of addiction when I started my journalism, because I went to a homeless encampment where 112 people were living for years and years and years in tents, and
Mm, yeah.
a portion of them was the byproduct of addiction. We discussed it, and so so your work is so noble to deal with that, and of course the work you did as a psychiatrist too. I mean, this is noble stuff. I mean, listen, we're there's all ways to look at it. Even the headlines with Venezuela trying to shut down that addiction pipeline, with them, shipping all that cocaine and all that other garbage involved in it. I mean, at so many different levels. That's part of our, I'm looking, because I explore addiction here, because there was a character here that had to deal with stuff and stuff. But anyway, so that's so noble. I kind of tip my hat. That Tangled Darkness in your work involves that, because it's powerful and it's not going away, and it's such a part of our culture. And
Mhm.
and I guess the more knowledge and the more things more people understand about it, maybe it might help to make the situation better. I'm just kind of rambling here. Um,
Yeah.
so in Tangled Darkness, your protagonist, uh, Dr. Shane, am I saying it right?
Yeah, I say it's Shone, you say it's
Okay.
Shane, whichever,
Yeah, it's kind of funny because my wife's maiden name is half that.
Oh, really?
Yes, she has an FELD at the end of that, and
Shamefeld.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of, as soon as I saw that, and I'm reading, about Tangled, I saw that it was kind of, a little synchronistic. I
Yeah.
got a kick out of that. So anyway, Dr. Shone, whatever, she walks the line between a healer and an investigator, which is kind of interesting. It's an interesting dichotomy. How do you navigate an ethical tension that turns a caregiver, a doctor, a caregiver, into somebody who pursues, like justice? Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, at first blush, I think, a physician in their day-to-day practice, they are an investigator. It's not necessarily with the overt motive of I'm seeking justice, but they are absolutely investigating. Um, yeah, and well, there were several areas of, appropriate boundaries that I wanted to be, conscious of and aware of when writing a story that's really set in a psychiatric clinic. The appropriate boundary between provider and client or patient, um, uh, appropriate boundaries between coworkers, professional coworkers. Um, so I thought about, well, the way to really weave the issue of seeking justice into it was that I will make the provider, the psychiatrist, I will load all the problems onto her shoulder and her shoulders. So she'll be seeking justice um, relative to what has happened to her that kicks off the story. And then, of course, I'm writing crime fiction, so there has to be a body somewhere. Somebody winds up murdered. And what I had to do is create a relationship between the main character and that victim, let's say, where it would make sense that she would want to solve that crime to do justice for, the person who she respects and cares for. Um, so yeah, a tough question, but I hope
Tough
I got
question.
that out fairly
Yeah, well, you
well.
did. You did. So you're in Portland. So how does Portland and LGBTQ that representation shape the I guess the emotional landscape of Tangled Darkness? Did those two factors
Yeah,
play into the emotional landscape?
yeah. Well, in terms of the queer representation, you know, I don't know, this was months ago. I was in the kitchen. Liz has got her computer set up behind the counter in the kitchen, and she says to me, "Do you know that Portland is the city in the U.S. with the highest lesbian population?"
Well,
And I said, "No, we're right where we need to be." You know what
huh.
I mean? So I just thought when I uh, went to write this story that I wanted to include LGBTQ plus characters or a character because it's just a natural for Portland. And and that it's set in Portland was almost a given for me because when we moved here in 2015, the first the first time we walked through the neighborhoods, both of us said, this is like being home. This is perfect here. It's just beautiful. The people are wonderful. Um, but the more I learned about Portland and the history of Portland, the more I realized it's a perfect backdrop for crime fiction. We get to about Halloween and then the rains begin. And, when it's rainy and it's storming outside, that's just perfect atmospheric background for, like a thriller, a psychological thriller. Let's just say it's a moody place. It's a moody place, and the weather is changeable. I tell you, moving here from being in Phoenix for 18 years, where it's just like steady sun all the time, blue skies, hardly ever rains, to experiencing the seasons and the feeling of the season. You get into fall and the colors of the trees, and you can see, oh, we're getting ready for hibernation and things are going to die away. And this is the time for grief. You know, um, it was just perfect. And then Portland's really kind of a quirky place. You can just be driving along and just see somebody in full costume. You know, uh, the motto around here is keep Portland weird. There's also a very high value placed on retro around here.
Hmm.
So you'll see old signs from the 60s and earlier that are um, refurbished and kept because they're valued. Um, I just really like Portland. I thought,
Neat,
it's an interesting place.
neat, neat, neat. It's funny. Rutgers played Portland last week in basketball, so of course I go to all those games. I love their uniforms. They're so green.
Yeah, yeah,
And they stand out. It was, and of course the Portland, Oregon joined the Big Ten, so we're now exposed to Oregon and football, basketball, and stuff, and I just got it's kind of neat. Many, many, many years ago, I always had aspirations besides Nebraska and in Iowa and stuff like that. And the second little wave I had was like Seattle, the Northwest.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I,
It's
I liked
beautiful.
I liked it, and there was something about it that drew me to it. Of course, I'm stuck here in Jersey. Why am I stuck here in Jersey? Because I confessed this to someone. The truth is, we're talking about addiction. The truth is, Mary, I'm addicted to the smell of car exhaust in the morning, and
Yeah,
that's why I don't want to leave.
yeah, yeah. You've been there for how many years?
At forever, I've never left. I mean, I was in Ohio for 2 years in college. Before Rutgers, 2 years in Ohio, but I've been here 78 years. Well, 76. I lived in Brooklyn for 2 years. So anyway, moving along. I like this question because it means something. When readers close the final page of Tangled Darkness, um, what do you hope important? What do you hope they're left feeling?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hope they're left feeling that they've been entertained, that they've uh, found an immersive experience. They've entered a certain world and that it was fun and entertaining. That's my first and foremost goal that I'm trying to reach. Um, and I'm hoping that when they turn the last page, they're also thinking, I wonder what else she wrote. And I wonder if these characters are in any other stories. Um, that's important. Beyond that, if it sparks some thought around, oh, my friend has been just stuck with that narcotic addiction for so long, and I've just seen them struggle, and I just don't know how to help. Maybe I should do something more, um, or let's say it's a healthcare professional who's struggling with substance use and has been reluctant to ask for help because they're worried about whether they're going to lose their career. Maybe would push them to say, I'll give it a shot. Um, but mostly it's about, this is entertainment, this is fun. What else can I read by her?
Okay. So when you wrote this, did you envision it originally as like being a series, or it's evolving?
Yeah, it is evolving. When I started to write it, I didn't think in terms of series at all. But as I was getting toward the end of the first draft and envisioning how I was going to, construct the last page before the end, the idea came to me about leaving an opening for book two. And indeed, book two, which is my work in progress right now, um, is exactly following the last page in this book.
Oh wow. So that's
Yeah.
perfect. Perfect.
I've written a couple of smaller stories to kind of bridge between book one and book two. And now I've also been creating what's called a character Bible, a world Bible, um, that is, you know, writing down and capturing the details of the characters and the different settings and places so that in subsequent stories, I keep things straight, did that person have green eyes or brown eyes?
Ah,
Or how many times have I been at this same setting in Portland? I got to come up with something new.
wow,
And
interesting.
yeah, so far I have uh three full-length novels either done or in process or planned, and I'm just coming up with what the story is going to be, another full-length novel after that. So I don't know. Every once in a while, you just get an idea. Like for that last thing I said, all of a sudden I got a title. I just got one word for a title. It was a download, Calvin, and I just wrote it down. And
Wow.
then, weeks went by, and all of a sudden, life gave me exactly who's going to be in that story, how they're connected to the character world that I've created. And we'll just see where this goes, you know, one story after the next.
I love that character Bible thing. Um, I think it's brilliant. I mean, I have no use of it because I'm a one and done guy, but it's so fascinating that you do that because you really do. You're gonna keep doing these. Uh, um, yeah, the creative mind to do these kind of stories, the suspense and the mystery and all that. It's just a wonderful creative mind. I'm just kind of an easy writer. I just kind of write about myself and fictionalize it and stuff, and but it really does channel the energies up here to keep it fresh and fascinating and I guess all those years of psychiatric work, keeps these pathways functioning at a high level so that you're able to do this.
Well, maybe it's in those years of psychiatric work, just hearing so many people's
Oh,
stories,
oh,
it's just uh, never a dull moment. It's like, some things you'd say, what? What? And then, and then, the following month you'd get surprised even beyond that, things you can't even imagine. So that I guess that does open up a world of possibilities.
okay. Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine the stories you've heard, with the patient on the couch or sitting. You always look at Tony Soprano when he was with his psychiatrist and stuff, and it's such a challenging. I mean, it's a wow what you've heard, but that could be a whole show. You
Yeah.
know, just just general, fictionalizing, but not. But your adventures. There are adventures in psychiatry and the things, um, and that's why it's so nice that it's coming out here to get glimpses of that journey because it's an incredible journey and not that many people write about it like you're doing. I mean, I have ultimate huge respect for psychiatry because it's hard to get
Mhm.
through. I mean, we that could be another show just to get through the to win the confidence and to get through what's in here. You know, as I'm beginning to learn things about the unconscious and stuff. Uh, does does unconscious themes ever come up in when you're dealing with patients?
Oh yeah, like for example, in Tangled Darkness, um, this is what's really driving the conflict for the main character, Leslie, is she has repressed, she has pushed into the shadow um, information and experience from her early life, uh, and from her life while in the throes of alcoholism that are getting knocked on by the events in the plot, you know, creating these psychological sore spots, vulnerabilities that isn't consciously aware of. But
Mhm.
knock, 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 what's happening around her is saying, hey, it's time for you to deal with these things. And that's indeed part of her transformation in the story, is how these recollections surface, and then how she deals with it, how she deals with what she's pushed away, and
Mhm.
the shame and the guilt and the emotional aspects that went along with that.
Okay. Interesting. What would you say are the most important addiction what's some of the most important things that addiction psychiatry is taught you about? One of my favorite buzzwords lately is resilience, because all over I'm just hearing about resilience. And how does that resilient stuff show up in your characters?
Mhm. Yeah, it's I tell you, addiction psychiatry, working with people with addictive disorders was something I did, from the beginning in psychiatry, but as a specialty from, the early 90s. And of course, the 90s was when the beginnings of the opioid epidemic began. But I realized maybe I also worked even more with people with addiction, because I did not just an office practice, but I consulted to a lot of those rehab facilities,
Hmm?
like Hazelden, let's say in Minnesota. And I did that all the way through until Portland. Um, so now you got to give me my train of thought again. I went off on a
Oh, well, just important lessons that addiction psychiatry taught you about
resilience.
resilience.
Yeah, well, so hearing the stories from all these people with addiction, I mean, it was just the demonstration of resilience, let me tell you. I don't know if you've ever had a good friend, a family member, in the throes of addiction, at a crisis point. But that is drama. That is just total drama. Um, and this is real life, this isn't just, I played it on television. This is people going through life, and what people survive is incredible. Back to those people living um, without homes, outdoors. Sometimes when I pass a person on the street, say hello, and see how beat up they are. I just have to think, how do you keep living? You know, but it tells me of the strength of the survival instinct in us.
Powerful,
It's powerful. Yeah.
powerful. That always moved me, and I write about it walking in Manhattan and seeing a pair of legs sticking out of a cardboard box, and that's where somebody is. It's a human being, and forever. I can't. We all came through the birth canal, basically, and we all start out at the same point.
Little babies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we all start out at the same point, and then some people wind up in a box, and people walk by, and the government walks by and stuff. I deal with that. Uh, I deal with it. And that's why I spent the weekend a homeless. I didn't live there. I'm not that, um, but back and forth just to feel and to learn about that. Anyway, well, this is heavy stuff. You know
Yeah.
what? We're gonna take a little break from this heaviness,
Oh,
and
good.
here's a couple. One of my favorite journalists, actually my favorite journalist, is Barbara Walters. Uh,
Oh, what an incredible
yeah,
woman.
so I'm gonna fess up to you that I plagiarized some of her questions. Uh, so my favorite question I love to ask Mary is excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with, and it could be a couple. There's no rules here.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's, the first name that comes to my mind doesn't surprise me whatsoever. It's Barbara Streisand. I would love to spend a day at, I'm going to say Babs, but no, I probably shouldn't say Babs, at Barbara Streisand's place because she's just an incredible person. I mean, not that I know her, but she was so remarkable and notable to me as I came up in the world. And I always followed her journey and the things she did, the artistic talent, the values for precision, you know, that she demonstrated. I love her voice. When I was a kid, I took voice lessons and I was, in the choir at this place and that place and loved to sing. I just think that it would be amazing to actually meet Barbara Streisand.
Great answer. Great answer. She just actually canceled. She was going to do a concert in New York City, and she just canceled it. I forgot the reasons why. And it
Hmm.
wasn't health or anything like that. She canceled a concert. My wife is crazy about her. Uh, and of course I'm a fan. And that movie, um, The Way We Were, influenced part of my life. I won't get into that now. It was such a powerful movie for me that it helped propel me into a divorce.
Mhm.
True story. We can
Yeah,
talk about that some
yeah,
other
yeah.
time. Yeah, some other time. All right, moving on. Another great question of mine. Do you have some favorite movies?
Oh my gosh. Well, I tell you, I haven't seen Wicked Forever or the latest Wicked, but the first Wicked of about a year ago, I walked out of there and I was walking on clouds. I was like, oh, like the power in the voices of the two women just transported me. I wanted to just sing along, and just the masterful orchestration of that movie and how I mean, you think of the Wizard of Oz and the story that it all grew from, um, and how metaphorical that story is, and it's almost like a timeless story, Um, uh, that's absolute a recent favorite. Now I got to think about um, old time favorites. I mean, I think we just got through the Christmas season and, you know, uh, movies like Miracle on 34th Street, um, you know, those, those Christmas movies that you've seen 100 times. Um, I kind of fell out of watching those after, probably the 99th time, but
Yeah,
those were always good favorites.
yeah,
I love going to cinema, and I mean I love streaming movies now. You can easily get all kinds of great stuff, international stuff. It's wonderful. But I really love sitting in the theater, and the big screen and being totally lost in the movie, just
yeah.
you just abandon yourself and it's as if you are in it. I love that experience.
I worry, conscious worry that there's a battle going on now to see who winds up with Warner Brothers Discovery. There's two entities competing for that. One is Netflix, which is a
Mhm.
streaming company, and actually Netflix is opening up in 2 years a $1 billion studio over 5 miles from my house. So that's going to do great for the local economy. Uh, uh, but I worry because I grew up to go into movies, and there was nothing in the world quite like it. And it was part of who I am and what I am.
Yeah.
And I worry that if a streaming company now gets a control of such a large catalog like Warner Brothers, they'll be more inclined to do streaming things.
Mhm.
And movie theaters as we know it have had a hard time since COVID. So anyway, I worry about that. Not consciously, but I worry.
Yeah, and great actors are going the way of streaming. Like, for example, Jamie Lee Curtis is in that Hulu show. What's it called?
Oh,
It's
right.
it's about the chef and the restaurant.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's just fantastic. Oh, speaking of fantastic movies, that Everything Everywhere All at Once, and her performance in that movie was just blew me away. She is something.
She is. She is. I just saw Trading Places last week, as a matter of fact. And she was great in that. I don't know if she got an award for that, but she was wonderful in that. And you talk about Christmas movies. I'm such a huge fan. I love Miracle on 34th Street. I watch it, and I actually wrote a. There's a scene in my book where my character says, "Stop the car," and he says, "Oh, that reminds me when Natalie Wood, at the end of the movie, said, 'Stop the car, stop the car.'" And she runs out and she goes into the house, and there's the cane, and so that movie's poignant, and I'm a big fan of A Christmas Carol, the
Oh yeah.
1951 version with Alistair Sim, and I watch that every Christmas Eve at midnight. I put it on, I have it, and I watch it because it just takes you into the world of Dickens in
Mhm.
1841, and it's such a powerful, the whole mood, the somber Gothic mood of that, and the message that Dickens so powerfully portrays. When the ghost opens up, the ghost of Christmas present opens up his robe, and there's two little children, a little boy, a little girl, and Scrooge says, "Well, who are those? Who are those kids?" And the spirit says, "They're mankind's. Beware the little boy, he's ignorance. Beware the little girl, she's want. But beware of the little boy the most." And I say, "Oh wow." Dickens wrote that in 1841. Nothing has changed.
No, nothing ever seems to change. The costumes change and the players,
Yeah,
but
but
it's the same old drama, isn't
same
it?
old drama. Nothing's changed, and how brilliant Dickens was.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to work,
Okay.
Mary.
Okay.
Um, for listeners here who are discovering you today, where should they start with your books, and how do they best connect with you right now as they discover you?
Yeah. Well, the best place is my website, which is very easy. MaryDesch.com, marydesch.com. The thing about my name that always trips people up is how to spell or pronounce my last name. But I used to always say in the office when I was doing medicine, I'd say, it's a dash, kind of like dash, you dash in, you dash out, only dash, Desch. You got to get the C in there. But that's it, marydesch.com.
Okay. Um, this is uh, kind of a neat question. In all your life, did anybody ever recognize that you're a writer? You have this writing spark, or when you touched on it earlier, or did the realization just come much later? But anybody ever say to you in your whole journey, "Hey, you could be a writer"?
Yeah, that brings me back to being a sophomore in high school. Oh my God. Okay, so I was the sixth of seven kids.
Oh, wow.
And sophomore in high school, how old are you? 15, maybe 16 or something like that? Um, anyway, I had an older brother who's not with us any longer, but then he was of college age. And when he went to college, he had a thing, a number of things happen kind of all at once. One was he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which was really difficult. But the other was he was gay and he came out. And, this was like, okay, 1970. It was before even traditional medicine, I call it allopathic medicine. Um, in other words, the MDs of the world, though the institution of our healthcare. At that point in time, being queer, being gay was a mental disorder. Well, it was really tough for him. He had a suicide attempt.
Right.
So in high school, my sociology teacher assigned us all a paper to write. And I went into the library in Grand Island, Nebraska, and I said, "Can I get the Kinsey report?" I have no idea how I even knew about the Kinsey report, but the librarian reacted to me like, she looked around like, "We don't carry that here. You would have to go to the college town, Hastings, to find that." Now, for anybody listening that doesn't know the Kinsey report, this was a study of human sexuality back in, I think it began in the 50s.
50s.
Yeah. And it was all about, the range of manifestations of us human beings, us the species, when it comes to sexuality. And so I traveled to Hastings, the college library. I got the Kinsey report. I read it, and I wrote a report about how, in those days we used the word homosexual, how that was just a normal variation of human sexuality. Um, I gave that to my mother to read before I turned it in, just proofread. And she said, "You're a good writer. You could write."
Wow.
And then I gave it to my teacher and got an A plus. And she gave me the idea that I could write. It's hard to really express how strange that was for a 15-year-old kid to write about gayness in school for a paper in whatever year that was, 1970. But um, that's the story that I wanted
Yeah.
to tell about it.
Interesting. Really interesting, especially, the time and the place, because, it's kind of lily white out there.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
It's lily white, it's all beef country and stuff and,
Heteronormative too,
yeah,
completely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, do you have I always like to ask this as an author, do you have any creative rituals, before you're gonna sit down and like do particular scenes and stuff, uh, to,
Yeah.
to get
You
that
know,
to get that out of you? Are there any uh, I usually have a tuna fish sandwich and that helps my creativity. I don't know why.
I
Um,
was gonna say, I have a certain way that I make a good cup of coffee, and
okay,
that's really it.
okay, okay.
Instead of espresso, I have these little pods that are just coffee that I can put in the espresso maker machine to make a good cup of Italian coffee. And then really heat up milk with nutmeg and cinnamon, and of course it's oat milk, and make it super hot, just like my grandmother. She drank her coffee boiling, super hot. And that's my cup. That's what gets me
Okay.
started. And maybe it's
Hey,
the ritual of putting that all together that gets me in the
part of
mood.
it. Part of it. I really don't have a ritual. I just come down and I write. Uh, um, uh, and I've been lucky all these years that it just kind of flows. I did run into a period of 3 months when I was finishing tortoise. I just couldn't write. I didn't know what to do, and I really got stuck. And I knew I was kind of near the end here. I would come down here for months and play around and play some backgammon with somebody from Sweden, and nothing. And then an event happened when my mother came out of that picture. I have all my relatives' pictures looking at me, including that grandfather that I showed you before we went on there.
Yeah.
Long story, but one day my mother came out of the picture and she typed "mom" on my cell phone.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was the kick in the butt that I needed. And I went back and I finished my novel because she watches me 12 hours a day.
She was saying, you can do it.
Yeah, she came out, she typed "mom." And of course, I asked a million people, how does that happen? Of course, nobody gave me an answer that was substantive. Oh, well, this. I said, well, I don't have voice activation. And yes, I was looking for ways to bond with my mom. I was listening to Mary Alonso sing Only a Rose for 3 days. And,
Mhm.
and, and after that little 3 day thing, and she loved that in the 50s, maybe she came out and typed "mom" to tell me she's around. Next day, I got a haircut because she always gets mad at me when my hair was. So I
Yeah.
got a haircut because she's there watching me.
She's
Great
watching.
stuff. Maybe
Yeah.
I should come out there and sit on a couch and talk to you about this stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious about this. And we may have touched on it, but what particularly draws you? And I'm not psychoanalyzing you now, but what particularly draws you to writing murder mysteries as a storytelling form? Because you could have branched out into a million things, even comedy.
Yeah, yeah, I do like to write funny things. Well, I don't know. It was there for me when I was a kid. Like my best friend when I was like 8 and 9 years old was Susan Cunningham, who lived a catty corner across the street, and we would go down to the Jack and Jill grocery store, walk down there with our coins and buy candy and sweet things. But I always saved enough coins to buy the Alfred Hitchcock mystery magazine.
Ah,
Always. And, maybe television of the time later, shows like Mannix or oh, even Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Night Gallery, that kind of suspenseful, weird things happen show always, always drew my attention. When I was first in Minneapolis, and I had been accepted by their psych residency program to be trained there. The the chief resident, who was outgoing, was driving me somewhere one day when I was brand new, and I said something like, "Yeah, I just can't wait to get around those, you know, crazy people who like do crazy things like commit murder." And he looked at me and he said, "You know what? Mostly the correctional system deals with those folks." In other words, he was saying to me, don't get your hopes up because you're not going to get a chance for that. But when I was a third or fourth year resident, I did get a chance to moonlight at the forensic psychiatric hospital in Minnesota, St. Peter's, and people were admitted there for murder due to insanity. I think I was always interested in what would make a person take another human being's life.
right.
I think
Yeah,
that's just the craziest thing ever.
correct. Correct. So correct. But we have a few off-topic things. Just one more. 'Cause, by the way, we can go on for hours. I have to control myself. Uh, but you talked about, you said it. The Sisters in Crime and the Willamette, the groups. How important were these groups in helping mold you? and keep you focused and stuff? Because I'm looking. I mean, I found my thing with bold authors
Mhm.
network with Kay Wagner, which has been so transformative for me. But how did they help you?
Yeah, it's so crucial. It's being part of a community. I mean, the power of community is um, undeniable. And that Portland is such a bookish place, with pals and the Willamette Writers community. I was fortunate to have met a writer who has become a very close friend of mine just by attending the next door neighbor's Easter party. And then through this friend, Diane, she introduced me to multiple authors, local authors, all of whom are connected to Willamette Writers. And so just having those connections and those people I can email, I can call, I can run into at book events, I can set up a meeting over coffee. It just really helps keep the juices flowing. And with Sisters in Crime, I can start my day going through their email board. I can sign up for their workshops. I can go to their conferences. There's just so much.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've just learned that the writers community is so generous. So many people are so willing to give their time and their help.
You know
Um,
why? Because we've been through it. I
yeah.
said that to you. We've been through it like few, and that's I think a huge problem. America has no idea. I mean, and I'm kind of tongue in cheek in it here, but America has no idea what we go through to put out stories to tell them.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not taking my violin out here and strumming my violin. It's a rough journey.
Hmm.
It's a rough
Yeah,
journey.
it
So
takes a lot to write a book, to hold it into your mind, the whole thing by the end of it, when you're doing those final polishes on it. Um, but as we had spoken about earlier, then once it's out in the world, trying to get it visible to readers is just uh,
yeah,
so
I know
tough.
about that. It's funny. Norman Mailer once said, um, for an author, writing a book is like giving birth, like giving
Mhm,
birth. So I didn't, I biologically I can't do that, but I certainly have done it.
mhm.
It was a 5 year gestation. It was a long gestation, but gosh, we could talk about that subject for a whole bunch. Um, a couple of off-topic things. We're kind of wrapped up this to the point where please come back when you've got sequels, and please come back because we want to keep this going and keep talking because your journey is so fascinating to me and what you're doing, and I'm just so glad. I always reach out to the networking gods who put things together, and I believe that's a spiritual thing too. Um, but just really off topic because I've been exploring with all the stuff that befalls me, this wonderful spiritual gift and all the things I've learned these last 15 years with spirituality and I've told you some of these stories. It's wonderful. It's a gift, and I think we all have it. The problem is
Mhm.
nobody takes the antenna and sticks it up there. But we all have it. Nobody's doesn't have it. But we're all too busy in our little busy electronic worlds to pay attention to things that are out there. That's my opinion. I'm no expert for sure. Um, but um, I'm trying to frame this the right way. I'm laughing because I've been spending a lot of time the last couple of months with a really good friend of mine who's heavily into UFOs and stuff. Do you have any opinions on that UFOs and stuff? Because there's a lot of stuff out by your neck of the woods, in the Northwest.
Yeah. Do you know, Do you know I have the weather app on my phone and it's sending me notifications. The other day it sent me a notification about these award-winning photographs of space. And so I went there and I saw these pictures, excuse me. And the photographs were just like uncanny, beautiful pictures of what exists beyond the earth, you know. Um, have I ever seen a UFO? I don't think I've ever seen one. Do I know someone who has? Yes, my brother-in-law, and he's completely can tell you this story, that story.
Uh,
Um, it, I think it really influenced his life because he was a young man, maybe was still a youth, you know, in his late teens when he saw a UFO. But um, yeah, I just think the government's been studying that for decades and kept it a big hush hush until maybe not so much. I think it's real stuff that's very interesting.
okay, yep, that's good. That's good. Real stuff. I just like to I throw this out. I interviewed a woman um, early on, like 3 years ago, who was at Mount Shasta down the road from you,
Yeah,
and that's a hotbed for stuff.
what do
And
you know?
at some point, she was camping and blah blah, and some alien took her by the hand and took her aboard their ship and stuff. And she's as sane and down to earth and delightful as they come. And she drew pictures from what she remembered. I just throw that out uh, to chat. Um, this is a good place to do rap because I have more stuff, but we'll let that go to next time, Mary.
Okay.
There's stuff here. So, uh, this has been great. And I'm just so thankful, we connected. Your journey, so intriguing that, what goes into this and your background, what makes this. And again, we're bonded because we're authors on that
Yeah.
journey. And so, I hope this to be continued.
Yeah, I really want to thank you, Calvin, for this opportunity. I've just enjoyed myself so much this
Yeah,
morning,
thank
and
you.
I absolutely want to come back.
Perfect.
And I'll be telling you very soon about my sequel to Tangled Darkness because let's see, what is it? In 2 weeks and one day, my sequel will be on Amazon. You
That's
know,
great. Well, you know
yeah.
what? Hey, no rules here, so come back. You
Okay.
know, Bill Maher has new rules. I have no rules.
Okay.
I just
Sounds
made that
good.
up. I just made that up. There's no rules, so come back. We'll chat because I have more off-topic things to touch base with you at. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave. We'll do a 2-minute wrap. Thank you, Mary,
Okay.
and good luck with Tangled Darkness. Take
Thanks so
care.
much, Calvin.
Okay, bye bye.